Ready?
Yay. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. I know it's always difficult during lunchtime or any time during the day. So I super appreciate you being here. I hope that we can make it quick with some good actionable items. I know it's really hard to have these conversations sometimes. I've been through all of them. I've had all of them personally, right? So I think that hopefully we don't have to have too many of them, but when we do, we'll be prepared. So want to give you some tips and tricks. I want to project that confidence when we have these challenging conversations. I don't want it to be like a point of anxiety or a fear factor. It's just part of our job, part of being an adult, and we're going to work on maybe doing it a little bit better. So for those of you who haven't met me, first off, let me figure out how to make my screen go. There we go. For those of you that haven't met me, I am Megan. I joined GPA back in February as kind of like an add-on for help with operations. I've done a lot of handbook editing, some price adjustments. Some people have told me talking to me is like going to therapy. So I am here for whatever it is that you guys need. I was in private practice for 25 years. I've been in vet med for 27. I've done practice manager, operations manager. I earned my CVPM. I served on the board of the VHMA. And so I've done a little bit of everything, right? Like I've fixed the toilets and I've run the payroll. So I can definitely relate to all of the things that we're going through every day. I do have a degree in communication, but I don't think that that's what has gotten me to this point with having the difficult conversations. I think that part of it is my nature. I am very straightforward. I don't have a good poker face. All of those things that I have kind of worked on over the years. But so I don't think you have to have a degree in communication to be good at communicating, but it probably helps. But we're gonna all improve together. Oh, look, there's more pictures. Yeah, here I am. That was back in the day. Clearly on the left. That was a long time ago. So all of these come from real life experiences with seemingly successful outcomes, at least from my point of view. So today we're going to take a deep breath and we're going to tackle these challenging conversations head on. And we're going to start by identifying some of these root causes that might be adding to the angst. Okay, so usually there's two major hurdles when it comes to uncomfortable communication. There's external and internal. Most times these internal barriers can be addressed and resolved in advance. So if you're struggling for a private place to talk, like I know that some of you are having conversations in your car, somebody's got a picnic table out back. We just need to have a appropriate place that's not in the middle of the treatment room. That's not going to be someone's going to come in and like get a roll of toilet paper. We probably need 2 chairs. Sometimes we need a box of Kleenex. We for sure need a door. So if we can have these uninterrupted spots, it'll really help with connecting with your employee and having those one-on-one private conversations. Different styles of communication. So I realize that generational traits, personality characteristics, they all seem like the same hurdle, but they come with their own set of obstacles. So maybe we think about oversharers, right? I don't need to know all of that to get through my day. There's also like generational conversations that I have where I don't understand half of the slang that they're using, and I just have to like use context clues to figure out what bet means. So how do we deal with somebody that doesn't communicate the same way that we do? I personally we did personality tests for the staff. And so we did a really fun one where you end up, what kind of dog am I? Because that's very relatable in vet med. So Pat, if you have a good relationship with your Patterson rep, they can come in and do this for you. I highly recommend it as part of your onboarding process. So I had a poster in my break room that kind of talked about the different personality traits and then would list all of my employees and who they were, like Jenny was obviously a Doberman and Clay was a golden retriever. And so that was really helpful when there was employee drama that I could be like, that she's a Doberman. Like this is how she responds. And that you roll over and pee. So like, we've got to meet in the middle and like be able to have these conversations. So I found that to be super helpful. And bonus points if you can do the animal ones. How do we feel when we deliver someone else's message? And maybe it's not our thoughts, right? It's not how I would say it. It's not the outcome that I'm looking for. How can we make that easier to tackle? There's always people that need us to do their dirty work, right? Whether it's a boss or an employee who's not comfortable having the conversation. So I think when you're sharing a sentiment that you don't agree with, it can like lead to some anxiety, right? You're projecting your own feelings onto this message that you already don't want to deliver. So I think it's important you just confirm the message, right? What is it exactly that I need to tell them? You need them to start working Saturdays again? Okay. We need to do it professionally. We need to not throw anybody but under the bus. So like Dr. Smith needs us to work Saturdays again. Like the obvious eye roll and the calling somebody out on it isn't exactly fair. So we just need to deliver the message straight and comfortably. Just say, you can say, Dr. Smith asked me to tell you that we're going to start working Saturdays again. So if we can schedule around your kid's soccer, things like that. We're going to state the facts. We're going to move on. What's next? Oh, this is for everybody, right? Time management. There are never enough hours in the day. I could do a million things, write all the lists and never get them done. But your staff deserves timely communication. These conversations deserve your attention. So we need to schedule a time and we need to stick to it, right? We need to be respectful of everyone's time. No one wants to hear the let's talk later, only to be blown off multiple times. I know your staff does this to you when they text you at 10 o'clock on a Sunday night and say like, can we talk tomorrow? So we just need to make sure that we are following up, being appropriate, and being respectful of their time and their anxiety too, right? So now internal barriers, these are usually harder to fix, but just like any other new skill, they can be a work in progress. So we can continue to work on these. Empathy, it's like sharing someone's emotions, right? So it's not a weakness, but it can definitely be a barrier to conversations. We're human, we care about our staff, but really we need to think of our team as a whole. So I understand that maybe Susie's a single mother, but she hasn't shown up for 75% of her shifts, right? So I feel for her. I understand what she's going through, but at the same time, I'm trying to run a business. You don't have to be the bad guy. It's really important to remember that people usually fire themselves, right? We've given them expectations and they're not meeting them, and that's on them, not on us. It's a hard one though. I totally understand. Fear. Look at this little cute guy, he's scared. Fear regarding upcoming conversations, super overwhelming, right? We're in our head. What's the worst thing that could happen though? I mean, like really the worst. You could die. That's like that, right? That's the pinnacle. That is up here on the worst things that could ever happen is that I could die. But that's probably unlikely in this scenario. So what's the worst that could happen? Somebody's going to argue with you. Okay, I can deal with that, right? I have a 10-year-old. We know. We're not here to have an argument, stating the facts, moving on. Someone could cry. Understandable, right? It heightened emotions. I've got a box of Kleenex. I'm prepared for this. I can say like, they're there. I understand, and we can move on. So really like role play your worst case scenario and then you'll be ready, right? If I know that she cries every time I have a conversation with her, whether it's about scheduling or like the rain coming this afternoon, like I know that she's going to cry. I'm going to be prepared for that. I got this. I use this plan for everything from like riding roller coasters to presenting today. I just think like, if I don't vomit today, like out of nervousness, then like I've accomplished my goal, right? So what's the worst that could happen? Oh, imposter syndrome. This is my gorilla being a tiger. It's rampant in vet med, right? Whether it's because you're new to the position, you worked your way up, you're family owned. I think that imposter syndrome is like a constant companion for so many of us. I can tell you that you're probably in your position because you earned it, or somebody saw something in you, or you worked really hard, but you're not going to believe it until you believe it yourself. So what can we do to try to like boost up our confidence? We're going to say you're going to face it till you ace it, which is the positive spin on fake it till you make it, because I wanted to put a positive spin on it. So face it till you ace it. If you know a great communicator, or if there's someone you admire that handles their staff really well or is savvy at business, just pretend you're them being you. I know it sounds silly. My mom used to have me make calls for her and say I was her. And like, I was like, just pretend you're me, mom. Like, just pretend you're me being confident on the phone. So like, just get through it. It'll be fine. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you will be. Overthinking. This is a hard one too. These internal ones are really hard. I totally get it. Overthinking can keep you up at night and can distract you from moving on to other tasks. There's nothing wrong with planning ahead, right? I'm all for coming at it with a plan, but overthinking after the fact never solves anything. You can't go back in time. You can't change the outcome. So the only way to stop overthinking is to stop, which I know is not super helpful, right? Like I'm not giving you earth-shattering advice, but we just need to learn to redirect. We need to move on to the next thing. Past is the past. We're working on the future. It takes self-awareness, which is sometimes hard. It takes practice, which takes effort. Totally worth it though. Like imagine if you could just go to bed at night and fall asleep instead of like thinking of all of the silly things you said that day, or like, what, I should have done this, I could have done that. It can be a total game changer to just be out of your head and be confident in what you did today and move on to the next thing tomorrow. Personal bias is always one of my hardest challenges because good or bad, it can take a toll on you when it comes to difficult conversations. If somebody's proven themselves to be a subpar employee, look, I've already written them off. Like I don't have time to like handhold and console you and that kind of thing. So like this is what I struggle with, is that I don't see the point in investing my effort. So I am biased towards that, which we got to work on that, right? Or they might be like this sweetest technician, but they filled meds wrong 3 times this week. So it doesn't matter who they are, what they've done, it needs to be addressed. Just be professional and you'll be fair. Okay, here we go. We're going to real life topics. So vendor drop-ins. I've heard so many, I've dealt with this. I know everyone deals with this on the daily. It's the worst, right? You're in the zone, you've got your to-do list, and like all of a sudden Steve shows up selling you X, Y, and Z. We can laugh at the lengths that we've gone to hide from vendors. Some of you have army crawled, right, from behind the counter. I have changed my tone of my voice so that someone couldn't hear me. I've also hidden behind a door. So like, I am right there with you. I know that this happens. But really, like, we just need a direct approach. First, you need to tell your team that you're not seeing vendor drop-ins, right? Because they're your first line of defense. When you get the call that Steve's up front, you can like pop your head in the lobby with this like pile of papers in your hand and a hurried look and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were coming. I'm confident that you can pull off like the busy stress look. I think all of you can manage that. So I think you say, Steve, I'd love to chat now, but it's like super inconvenient for me. If possible, can we like meet on Tuesday? So you got to keep this conversation in the lobby, right? If you've gone back to your office, you've already lost. Steve won. It's going to keep going around. Maybe say, hey, Tuesday or Thursday really work best for me, but can you email me just to make sure? Or maybe like text me next time you're in the area. Like, I'd really like to keep these meetings scheduled. And then you just need to walk away. Bye, Steve. It's good to see you. I'll see you next Tuesday. Period. End of sentence, right? We're not going to like sit in the lobby and look at their new sales. We're not going to talk about daughter softball. We're just going to move on with our pile of papers and our stressed outlook. Respecting you is respecting your time. So like this doesn't need to be confrontational. This isn't angry. It just needs to be consistent. So the next time Steve drops in, you say, ooh, I wish you would have called ahead. I'm just about to step into XYZ. Being direct isn't rude. It's called communicating, and it's okay. It's okay to set some boundaries. They're there for you. So, and they want to get in to talk to you. And so it's no fun to have like those hurried 10-minute conversations in the lobby. So we just got to be direct and stick to it. Okay. This is one of my favorites because I use this. How can we address the really sweet kennel worker who desperately wants to be a vet assistant, but has the attention span of a Jack Russell? Or sometimes you have an associate DVM who wants to be your medical director, but hates dealing with people. There's some people that just like don't get it, right? They have no idea who they are, how they come off. I use this opportunity to sit down and review the job description for the area that they want to work in. And that way we can look and see like, hey, this is something that we, like let's work on these 4 things in the next month and see how it goes. If you don't have job descriptions, we can work on those as well. But once their task list is created, we can set some realistic goals, some timelines. And then whether they grow into the position or not, you've acknowledged their wishes, right? I want everyone to learn up. I want my kennel workers to become my technicians. We've set them up for success, and then the rest is up to them. I think that this is also a super great opportunity to address hiccups in a non-confrontational way for those of you who like non-confrontation. Gee, gosh, I would love to cross-train you to answer the phones, but when you call out every other Monday, it's really hard to schedule these training sessions. So you kind of like address the areas of concern, and they've kind of come to you saying they want to do more, but I can't give you more because you're not already showing up for your current job. So this is a really easy way to like check in with them and tell them some areas that they need to work on. And because this isn't a hard no from you, right? It's not that you can't be a technician. It's you can't be a technician now until you prove yourself on these things. So this doesn't have to be a difficult conversation. People have told me I'm mean, right? Because I'm direct. I'm honest and people aren't used to that. But to me, I think it's mean to make empty promises. So look, I want to help you. Here we go. Let's do this together. And then it's on them. Okay, ready? I know we've all agonized over these kinds of conversations. The stinky employee, that happens. The one who constantly has derriere cleavage showing, that's a thing when those scrubs hang low. There's a million other potentially embarrassing conversations, right? Like, please don't come to work smelling like pot. But, if only it was like spinach in the teeth, that would be easy for everybody. It's not always that easy. I recommend starting this conversation casually, but privately. I like if somebody's like walking by my office, I can say like, hey, can you come in here for a second? I think that that's a lot easier than like the we need to talk conversation starter. I think it's best to be direct. I know this is hard for you. It's hard for everybody. It's hard for the person standing on the other side of the desk. But I think out of respect, it's easier to say I versus we. I noticed you've been sweaty after walking the dogs in the afternoon. Do you have an extra scrub top that you can change into, or do I need to get you some more? I think that brings up the conversation, makes them aware that we're aware that they're sweaty, right? You can kind of beat around the bush without saying like, you gross sweaty monster. Or saying, hey, I noticed when I walked by a couple times today that your scrub pants were hanging a little bit low. Would it be possible to wear an undershirt next time so that they're less revealing? It is. It's like having something stuck in your teeth. You want to know, right? It's just, how would you like to be told? If I smell bad, please tell me. I'm letting you know now. Just tell me. I want to know. And I think as long as you avoid saying things like, well, everyone thinks you stink, or I had a vet that would try to like land a pencil down the crack of somebody who was bent over. Don't do that, right? Like, that is not appropriate. No one thinks that that's funny. That's not okay. Times have changed. We are moving past that. So I think just don't be vague. Just speak with compassion and you should be fine. I also think that we should probably document these conversations. I don't think it's something that you need your employee to sign, but it is something that we need to acknowledge in their file, just in case anything ever comes back that, yes, we brought up wearing their scrub pants too low. We suggested wearing an undershirt on Friday the 5th, so we know that it's in there. It's not that we want to reference back and be like, well, we talked to you about this. It's just if they ever come back and say that something was inappropriate or their feelings were hurt or whatever it is, we want to make sure that we're documenting how we approach this conversation. Performance improvement plans are also one of my favorites. And I hope that this is part of everyone's to-do list because I want to continue to improve, right? I want my staff to continue to improve and grow. This doesn't always need to be a punishment, but it's usually a great way to document if you've got someone on their way out or that you're hoping to get on their way out. Like, this is where you should start. And I think that consistency is key here. Shouldn't matter if it's your best employee, your weakest link, if it's your associate DVM or your kennel worker. everyone needs to be addressed the same. We're going to be specific. We're going to address the issue timely. We're going to have examples. So we can say, hey, there seem to be some inaccuracies when you're filling prescriptions. Last week, you sent home 5 tablets instead of 25. And then today you sent home meloxicam instead of metronidazole. So I've got real points of action. How are we going to fix this? This is on me to suggest how we're going to fix this. For the next 2 weeks, the lead tech's going to double check your prescriptions. If they're accurate, great. If not, we're going to go ahead and do some pharmacy continuing education and like review the process again and see where we land. It's okay. Like not everybody's set for every job. And maybe someone's, if they've got a learning disability and they can't count tablets right, then they should not be filling your prescriptions. And that's okay, right? We just need to be able to address it, to figure out if we can avoid it, if we can improve upon it, if we need to move on. We need to stick with a timeline on this for their sake and for our sake. We can't just drag this on forever. We're going to write it on our calendar, right? Because this is important to us. Like this is a real thing that we're addressing. We want to see improvement, and this is when we want to see it by. So if there's no improvement by the first check-in, we're going to reassess and update our timeline if needed, or we're going to cut our losses. But these are conversations that we have already had. The transparency means there's no surprises. Our response is a direct result of their actions or their inactions. This is a good reminder. Again, people fire themselves. This is what we've asked of you. We've given you the resources. You haven't met our, you haven't met our parameters. So we're going to part ways. It's not mean, promise. I know there's a lot of veterinarians here, so please either cover your ears or I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I've always said that doctors were my most difficult group to manage, right? They're by far the most demanding. It's amazing to me. Love them so much, right? Like can't live without them, can't function, need them, love them. Want to pull my hair out. But really the pressure that doctors are up against is huge, right? I know that there's a million things going on, especially when you're a practice owner. It is overwhelming the amount of pressure that's coming at you. Drinking from a fire hose, supporting all your staff, making all your clients happy. I totally get it. I think some of the bad behavior comes from stress. I think some of it comes from like an ego, right? Like if you're the pinnacle in the practice, you kind of can get away with some bad behavior sometimes. But I want to meet them there, like, right? I want to have these conversations with like, doc, man, I know you've been working so hard. We super appreciate everything you did last night. You stayed late for that sick kitten and the staff looks up to you, right? So when you kick that trash can out of frustration, like it really sets a bad example for the rest of the team. Like we have to address the naughty behavior. We can't just say like, oh, they're our biggest producer. Oh, they had a bad day. Like there's just some things that are inappropriate. Like we totally wouldn't accept a receptionist kicking a trash can, right? Got to nip that in the bud. So I think we need to acknowledge whatever sets them off and then suggest an alternative, right? Because maybe they can't think about it in the moment. Like I totally get that it's annoying when the CSR forgets to verify a client number, but calling Jenny stupid isn't helpful. Maybe next time you can send a tech to ask her to call the client, or like you can always come and vent to me. Like I'm happy to help you troubleshoot this. I think calling them out, right? Like you can't call somebody stupid, and then giving them an option of what they can do. And then just like any other performance improvement plan, we need to hold them accountable. Dr. Wilson, we've talked to you about throwing Sharpies in the treatment room. Like I'm afraid it's going to be a liability. So what can we do to help you out in the future? Put it back on them, acknowledge their inappropriate behavior, ask what we can do to help make it better, and then hold them accountable. Sorry, guys. Okay. Saying no to discounts. This is such a hard one because I was always like the mean person. Can we take in the box of kittens? No. Like no one wants to bottle feed these 8 cats, and who's going to pay for them? So like somebody has to say no, right? And so usually the buck stops with management or the practice owner. How can we do it without being a jerk? I would say hopefully you have a discounting protocol outlined in your handbook. If you don't, let's come up with one. I also think we should start tracking discounts if you're not. These things we should be doing regularly, daily, weekly. We just want to make sure that the receptionist at the front doesn't feel guilty for charging everybody appropriately and is like giving them massive discounts. There's lots of great opportunities to train your staff on how the business is run and the cost of doing business, because it is expensive these days. The staff is expensive. The cost of goods is expensive. Like, everything costs money. And at the end of the day, there's not always enough dollars to go around. So I like to, I've done one exercise where I gave everybody 100 pennies, right? And it looks like a lot, right? There's so many on the table in front of you. And then we're going to say 18 of those goes to cost of goods. 50 of those goes to payroll. So like at the end, you're left with like, I literally have like these 2 pennies left. What am I going to do with them? So it's a super effective exercise, I think, so that staff can understand you have very small margins, so that when they come to you with a raise, you know, I need a raise, or like, I just broke the ultrasound, or I want a new X, Y, and Z. We can say like, oh gosh, remember our tight budget. Like, this isn't going to work this month. Let's game plan or come to me again. But that kind of makes them a little bit more cognizant, because they think you have, if they don't know, if you're not sharing any of your books, they just see the bottom line every night and they know that you're making more money in a day than they are. And they don't think about the cost of the electricity or the potholes in the parking lot. Those things just aren't on the top of their mind. So if we can make them aware of costs, it's helpful. I also think you can create an angel fund, and fundraise money and then use that for discounts, or give your DVMs an allowance maybe of like, hey, you can discount $200 a month, $1,000 a quarter, whatever it is that works for you. And then they have the freedom to choose, the single mom with the sick cat or the hit by car dog, like, how are we going to use this? I think just come up with something that works best for your practice, but then you need to make sure that you inspect what you expect, so that we're holding these repeat offenders accountable. If you've got a doctor making production and discounting everything, like, that's not great, right? We just need to know who's doing what, so that we have a plan of kind of curtailing it. Sidetrack though, let me get on a soapbox for just a minute. If we have a discount program, like if we give 10% off to teachers or military, and then a first responder comes in and says, can I have a discount? And you say like, no, you're not on our list. Like, that's just a bad look. So if you have a discount program for, you know, some entities, and another entity comes in, like, just let's extend the discount. Like, don't be a jerk over 10% for them. I think it's just the right thing to do and move on. So I am a proponent of some discounts appropriately. It's a little backwards, right? I understand. Okay, employee raises. So this is me assuming that you already have a plan in place for evaluating and awarding raises. If you don't, it's something that we can work on together. I am also assuming that you already pay your staff a fair, livable wage. So like, this is not the conversation for that. That being said, I think it's only fair that your staff understands what they need to do to earn a raise. Is it based on a calendar year? Cool. Are there CE requirements? Maybe some attendance tied to it? Like, that's a good one, right? And you want a raise, I need you to show up. It's all totally reasonable as long as your staff knows what to expect. If I want to hit this button, if I want a dollar raise, what do I need to do to get there? I don't need it to be a surprise. I don't need it to be based on my last week's performance, because that's what you remember. I don't need it to be on my sob story, right? Everyone has the same parameters, and it's up to the employee to fulfill those. To me, I don't think like living another year is good enough to warrant a raise. That's just me. Again, that might be me being mean. So let's set some parameters. I would like post them in the break room, right? You're sitting there wondering what to do with your life. Like, I want to exceed to the next level. I could be doing some CE right now. I think make it aware. And that way you can always reference back and be like, oh, did you do this? That way they know what to expect. But this means you shouldn't give that kennel assistant a $2 raise just because she can't afford to DoorDash Starbucks every morning. Like, we have got to have a plan and we need to stick to it. So you're not the bad guy, right? I've clearly outlined what needs to be done to get to the next level. Have you done it? No. Cool. See you next year. I think that those are fair parameters. Okay, stepping away from being geared toward practice owners, it's very hard sometimes to ask for a raise for yourself. It's maybe more stressful than having the conversation with your team. I think lots of people just bury their head and don't ever ask for a raise because it's so stressful. But let's advocate for ourselves. It doesn't always come naturally for people. Some people would rather spend an eternity trimming pugs' nails than talk about themselves or to ask for, what they think that they're earning. So I think the key for this is to plan ahead. Unless you're the practice owner, tying or a DVM, I think that tying responsibilities to an increase in profit can be hard to prove, right? So if we can start making a list of positive contributions that we made since our last raise, if you've revamped your reminder system and there's been an increase in vaccine appointments, let's write it down. If you're concentrating on upping your social media presence and you've doubled your followers, cool, let's talk about it. I think that let's create a new attendance policy and everybody's coming to work every day. Like those are huge things that you need to point out. They're not always measurable in dollars, but those are making a difference to the practice. So I think it's also very important to concentrate on your worth and not compare your salary to someone else's. I hated knowing everybody's salary, right? Because they're either getting paid too much or too little. You compare it to what you're making, and that's not what we're here for. Complaining that the lead tech makes $1 more than you do or less than you do is not a great way to negotiate. So you just need to focus on what you're worth. And there's lots of reasons that a request might be denied. It might be that we only have the 2 pennies left. So let's ask for some feedback. Why am I not eligible for a raise at this time? What can I do to be eligible for a raise next time? Because unless you're writing the raise protocol, you might not have those answers. And then I would follow up, when can we have our next review, right? When can we follow back on this? And then let's listen to the feedback and let's start planning for our next conversation. I think that that's fair, reasonable. We just need to have the ask. What about challenging communication with ourselves, right? To stop feeling guilty for not doing all of the things all of the time. Like lots of us have come up through the ranks. Even if you didn't, yes, I'm capable of cleaning a cage. I can definitely pick up poop all day long, but I'm also the only one that can run payroll. I'm the only one that can fix that thingamajig. I'm the only one that has this laundry list of things that needs to get done by the end of the day. I am all for teamwork, but I'm also for delegation. We need to stop feeling guilty about doing our jobs and allowing someone else to do theirs. Like this is a hard one. So I get that, but these are difficult conversations that we have with ourselves, right? Like I feel guilty sometimes when I'm not doing all of the things, but we can't, not enough hours in the day, right? Okay. So I hope that these suggestions have sparked some confidence, serve as a reminder to be brave. You've got this. Believe in your ability to conquer challenging conversations. If you need to, you can pretend you're you being me, right? Being you. If you need help, if you want to talk through some of these things, we can role play, which is like, no one wants to do that, but we can totally talk about it. I am here. I'm here for your struggles. I'm here to celebrate your wins. We can do this together. So normally at the end of this talk, I open it up to questions, but just before we move on to that, I did want to share this QPR training. So every time I present this topic, someone asks me how to handle a not one more vet type of conversation. What a difficult conversation that is to have, right? That is not one that I am qualified to give advice on. However, I sincerely recommend that your entire staff, or at least your leadership team, becomes QPR trained. It's question, persuade, and refer, and it teaches you how to recognize the warning signs of someone in a self-harm crisis. It tells you how to respond. It tells you trigger words. It tells you phrases to use. It breaks down the thought processes between men and women, different age groups. It gives you specific steps to help when you can. Like, no one wants to have this conversation, right? Like, oh gosh, can't be anything worse. And you never know, like, is someone joking? Is someone not joking? How seriously do I take this? This QPR training has probably been one of the most impactful things that I've did as a practice manager. I can't recommend it enough. This is free. The AVMA gives it to us for free. So scan the QR code. We'll take you to the link. It's 60 minutes. It's totally worth your time. It's totally worth your staff's time. I can't recommend it enough. I hope you never have to use it. Okay. That is me. That is us. How can I help you? I am here however I can. I don't know if we have any